I guess that works. Hey, Sean. Okay, time to share my screen. Hi, folks. Welcome to my little Zoom session here where I'm going to tinker and try to build some layout stack components for the G2 component library. Hope you're all doing fantastic today. And I'm going to jump into this particular GitHub issue where I created. So yeah, these components are very, very interesting. And what you're seeing right here, these ZStack, VStack, and HStack, these are components that come from Swift UI. Swift UI is a new UI library and language that Apple has released for building like Mac OS and iOS applications. And these components, man, I started learning some Swift UI recently, and it's amazing because you can literally create everything just by using these components. And once you start getting used to those patterns, you'll start seeing them everywhere. And I'm going to jump to my iPad. And here's a very, hopefully you can see this. Can you see my drawings?
I see your iPad.
Great, you can see my iPad. Cool. So what is HStack and VStack? So HStack stands for horizontal stack. And if you can imagine, there's like an invisible box, right? And we add a little item inside. Oop, I'm gonna do this on a new layer. I'm gonna have A in there. By default, it'll kind of align itself in the middle. But the moment I add B, both A and B, they will know how to automatically vertically center and align themselves like so, like that. And then the more you add, the more these items kind of continuously align themselves magically within this HStack. And you can set it in a way where you can force certain elements like B to snap to the end like that, A to snap to the end like that, by adding what's known as spacer. And that forces them to go on either side. But again, the most important thing is that these ones are magically centered aligned with each other. And I mean, just taking a look at GitHub right here, hopefully you can see my mouse drawing, like that is an HStack. We have some items here. We have a collection of items here. So that's already an HStack. This is another one where you have two chunks of items here. One is a badge, one is a collection of stuff. We have another HStack here. One is an assignee and gear, and so on and so on and so on. It's a very simple but very powerful pattern that you can use everywhere. VStack, it's very similar, but vertically in reverse. So VStack would be, can I do this? Hang on. Merge down. Sure, yeah, merge down. Yeah, that's great. VStack is this. There we go. It's useful for aligning things vertically. So at least on an iPad or an iPhone, you can imagine things like a header snapping to the very top, footer snapping to the very bottom. And that's what a VStack is. And ZStack, this one is not as commonly used, but also very powerful. A ZStack is, jumping back to my iPad. Nope, right here. ZStack stands, I don't know, it's I guess like a X, Y, Z within CSS transforms. Z is used for layering. So imagine if you had a ZStack collection for, say, 3 items, right? This is 1, 2, and 3. What you would actually see within how it's rendered within iOS is that they all stack on top of each other. But the very interesting thing is that ZStack automatically applies a Z index for every single one. That's why, so here this would be Z index of 1, the Z index of 2, Z index of 3, something like that. So what you can do is like, oh, let's say you want this guy over here to peek out a little bit like that. all you have to do is you adjust the offset a bit, and then you get a little peaking effect, and then you can do that same thing for number 1, and you can kind of get that layered stacking effect without having to manage Z-index or anything. ZStack does that automatically for you. You might notice this kind of stacking UI. This is pretty common nowadays, where you have, say, an avatar, and then you have like another avatar, and then you have another avatar, something like that. So what ZStack can do, you can imagine these items are part of a ZStack. This one is Z index of 3, Z index of 2, Z index of 1. These Z indexes are assigned automatically, and they know how to automatically handle the layering without the actual individual avatar components having to do anything. And this is a beautiful relationship where the parent kind of layout based component is responsible for how the items or the components or whatever within need to render. The individual, avatars, the badges, the text, or whatever, they don't care. Like they shouldn't have to manage the index. They shouldn't have to manage alignment or anything like that. So that is what we're going to be building today. HStack, VStack, and ZStack for the web. I'm gonna hide my iPad now because I think I'm done with that. Close. I might draw again later on. We'll see. So I have something quite similar right now called Flex. Flex. I don't have a story for that, but that's okay. And Flex is a pattern that, let me see if I can find it. This is my friend's, this is my friend's blog. He and I used to be coworkers, and we worked together two companies ago. So he wrote a blog post in 2016 and highlights this flex pattern. And this is something that I kind of developed in like 2014, 2015, that basically is that HStack effect with smart defaults knowing how to snap items to the left side and to the right side with automatic vertical alignment. And this is the pattern I've continued to use throughout my UI development, whether it's in React or HTML or whatever the case may be. And it's also made its way into WordPress components because there is a Flex component within WordPress components that does exactly this. And I have it within this G2 library as well. The interesting thing, though, is that although this one has like a lot of flexibility and some defaults, we need to take that even further. We need to customize Flex a little bit so that it accommodates the feature set we want for HStack, VStack, and ZStack. So within G2, there's a really cool little workflow I've set up. I've set up a VS Code task. So what I can do is I can run this task, and I can make a new component. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, HStack. Why not? And what it does is that it automatically generates files for me, and I don't have to create files manually because I don't like doing that and I'm lazy. So this is nice. I have an HStack component right here, and the story should be automatically injected somewhere. HStack. Oh, it's maybe not because I'm not running. Oh, wait. Am I in the right? What's going on? Hey, this demonstration isn't working right. Component HStack. I'm just gonna restart Storybook. I did do some like pushes and builds and stuff before this call, so maybe there's something in there is messed up, but we'll see. And I'm also very nervous a little bit, having to do a Zoom call, record the Zoom call, do a Storybook build, and working within VS Code and also Chrome, just because lately my computer has been crashing randomly because it can't handle dev builds or something like that. So hopefully everything will be fine. We will see. HStack, there we go. So right now HStack does not render anything, and that's fine. The workflow that I like to have when I'm creating a component, especially if I don't have a written kind of like spec of, oh, it needs to do this and it needs to accomplish these things, it's all in my head, is that I work purely within the story. And I just kind of brain dump stuff into the story, because the story is like a playground. It's a safe space, right? It's very similar to what you would do in a code sandbox or code pen. I just kind of write whatever it is here, and then I'll take this and I'll translate it into the actual component itself. So HStack, right now HStack does not do anything, which is fine. So I'm going to import a view from the main collection of stuff. I'm going to render something inside. HStack does not do anything. That's perfectly fine. View, and I'm just going to write the word hello, as I like to do it. Auto complete stuff. Cool. So I have something that says hello. I'm going to zoom into this. And I'm just going to simulate some of the features that you would get from a HStack. So I'm going to write some CSS. So the cool thing about this this component library and all that is that you can write CSS like this, kind of inline. It'll know how to compile itself into the browser. And it's very convenient, just because I don't need to kind of come up with arbitrary class names and try to bind them together. It does this automatically. It automatically binds the styles to the React components. So what styles do I want? I want to just give it a border of 2 pixels, solid, black, I don't know, padding of 8, and a display inline flex, I guess. And right now, there it is. That's all we see, which is perfectly fine. Does not do anything. I'm going to make it a margin of auto, so it snaps in the middle, hopefully. Oh, no, it doesn't do that because of display inline flex reasons. So there we go. Takes the whole thing. And I want, let's just say every item inside, let's just give it a background, a border of pink as well. That way we can see stuff. So just have a div, hello. We'll have a pink. And I have another div there. And right there. So what I want for this HStack is I can define some behaviors for it. Justify, so right now, HStack, VStack, both of them, thankfully, Flexbox exists within CSS. We can leverage the Flexbox model within CSS to kind of accomplish this magical calculation stuff of what we need. So space between, what space between does is that it snaps the items to the very ends. Hello and there, you can see them on the opposite ends. And this is how the default Flex component works within the library, just because this is the most common use case for Flex. I don't know if that's kind of what we want for HStack. Maybe. Center, what that does is that you'll see them centered like that in the middle. And the more things you add, the more they stack with each other within the middle of the thing. The other interesting thing about VStack and HStack within SwiftUI is, I'm just going to write some pseudo SwiftUI code right here. So HStack looks like that, and then you put stuff inside. What you can do is you can give it a spacing of, let's say, 20. And what that does is that every single item will have a margin or padding or margin, whatever, of spacing for everyone in between. We can replicate that with CSS by doing something like this. Margin right, say 20. But for the last one, last child, margin right 0. So now we get effectively spacing for every single item, but now, except for the last one. And with this, you can very easily kind of align things and give them appropriate spacing depending on the type of UI that you want to build. And I'm going to do a little kind of something here so we can see. So this, align items center. CSS. Let's make this guy a height of, say, that's big, 200 with a background of red. Great. So using Flexbox, we're able to magically snap things to the center. And this is, say, the default behavior. This is kind of what we want. And here, it doesn't matter how tall or short all the items are within this HStack. They know how to kind of center align themselves. And this is effectively an HStack. I think this is kind of what we want to build. Oh, yes. One more thing. Within whoops. There's also this HStack within. So just say you have a text of hello. I'm writing pseudo Swift UI code now. If you want things to have a space in between, like a gap, you would add a spacer component within Swift, and that's the thing that will give things space. We can do the same kind of thing in here. So I'm just going to really quickly make a spacer component, which it does this. It renders nothing, it's empty, but it has a flex property of 1, and that basically takes up the amount of available space in between things. So if I inject a spacer here, it should, there we go, it should snap things to the end depending on where it is I want to inject it. You'll see that there's a border here just because I made arbitrary items that appear inside have some sort of random border. I'm just going to get rid of that border. None important. Again, writing not so clean code right now. I'm just purely sketching just to kind of get some ideas of what it is I want to build, and then I'll translate it to the real thing. Spacer, let's say I want to inject a spacer in between, instead of saying there and there randomly, I'm just going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we know the difference between all the elements that I'm working with. Great. So now we have arbitrary space in between 4 and 5, and then we snap all the things onto the right left-hand side. Yeah, so this is basically HStack. And how do we translate this into actual code? This is the next step. So there are a few kind of things I have to consider. One is I don't like this. I mean, this works, but the thing is, it's very fragile when it comes to component library, components, if you were to compose things together. Just because you may put something else in here, like your own special component. I'm just making that up. That may have its own special border, margins or something in there. And if you were to arbitrarily attach margins in them to this guy, it may break. So what we actually want to do is, let's pretend we have some stack item thing. Children, view, what's it render? It renders children, right? Children. So what we actually want to do is something like this. Let's say it's a requirement that every single item that you put inside is a stack item. That way, this code doesn't actually work, but you can kind of imagine it. That way we can target it so that only stack items receive this kind of special margin right normalization treatment. Otherwise, doesn't. This provides us with some safety, just because, now we're explicitly targeting stack items within this HStack. And if we put in arbitrary special components or anything else, we don't touch it. But the downside of this is that having to write this plus also like your own whatever, it feels really verbose, right? At least for me, it does. How can we make this better? So instead of them being stack items, let's pretend they're divs again. And what if HStack could automatically wrap every single item with a stack item? That'd be cool, because now I don't have to manually write stack item all the time. It just knows how to handle it. But it should do that for every single one, except if it's a spacer. Because if you have a stack item like this, then the spacer property no longer works. So that's the logic we're kind of defining. HStack, using CSS, will align the items like so, using flex justify content in a line to do some magical center aligning. Spacer allows you to snap items to certain areas to give them space, depending on whatever it is you need. And we have to add logic so that stack item, which is the special component that HStack is enhancing for gaps. Like here we have spacing of 20 pixels, so that it can take care, so that it can render those styles into the stack items. And that stack item should automatically wrap every single element that appears within, except if it's a spacer. So let's build that. And thankfully, all the stuff I just said, automatic wrapping, context awareness of whether something is an item or not, that's already been built into Flex, which is great because I don't have to build all that again. So within Flex, it actually clones the children and loops through them. It detects whether something is a Flex box or a Flex item, and it'll wrap them. Here we have auto wrap by itself, and it'll do some special stuff. So since Flex already does all this, right? It uses Flex and it does some auto wrapping and does all that kind of stuff. Let's make HStack use Flex so that to do what we need to do with HStack. So that is the game plan, because 80% of the logic we determined here already exists within our Flex component. So let us just use that. So if you think about component composition, and this is really, this is quite a common thing within component libraries especially. I'm gonna write all these as comments. Nope, those aren't actual, no, forget it. This is new file. If you can imagine, we have a Flex component here, sorry, HStack, right? We're building HStack using Flex. Cool. And that's really cool. And Flex is built using Vue. Vue is a very, very base, lowest level thing within this component library as far as components are concerned. There's a bunch of other special stuff within Vue. It actually uses something called system div. And system div uses React, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. But as far as component libraries are concerned, you don't care about this. We just care about this part. It's really helpful to have smart, feature-rich primitives like Vue and then Flex, so that we're able to use them to build something else like HStack. That saves us from having to write all this logic all over again, like all the stuff I described with looping, auto wrapping, and all that kind of stuff. We're just able to leverage Flex to enhance it, to build HStack. And a lot of the component libraries here, a lot of the little components in here follow that kind of convention, where you're using something else to build something else. And as a consumer, for this component library, let's say you're a third-party block developer, or you're working with Gutenberg Core or anything else like that, you don't need to care about all that. You just use HStack, right? And you put stuff inside. And you can call it a day. That's all you care about. And then this very lightweight kind of component API. That is what we're trying to build. That is what we're optimizing for. And that's why there's so much complexity that lives within components like Flex and everything else, so that it alleviates that overhead from the end user implementing this code. That kind of thinking, it drives everything within the component library, because you want the people using this stuff to have a good time. That's it. That's how I approach this stuff. You want them to have a good time. You should give them all the little bits they need to compose whatever. They don't need to write a lot of code, but they're able to use it in a very powerful, flexible way. So, HStack. Cool. Let's use Flex then. Import Flex from .flex, I think. Yeah. And HStack uses Flex. And let's, whoop, well, I got rid of all my examples. HStack now uses Flex. So let us, get rid of, let's just render that, because now it's just using Flex out of the box. Let's see what we get. Cool. Flex out of the box, we get something like this. I'm going to add some borders on this guy so we can see. CSS, border, 1 pixel, no, 3 pixel solid black. And then all so we get the border so we can see it. Great. Actually, red's a bad idea. It looks like I'm screaming at me. And let's see all the items in between. We have border and blue. So now we can see all the items in here. Great. This is what we get out of the box with Flex. If I take a look at these items, these are divs, right? But you can see all the children here. They're actually using Flex item. And that's just because, hopefully you can see this in the Zoom call. That's just because it does the auto wrapping for us. And now we can see the actual div is inside. Great. I mean, the default Flex behavior is basically an HStack, I think. Snapping to the side, center align. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe we want the alignment. No, sorry, the justify to be center. Let's just pretend that's the default behavior we want for HStack. So now everything is center aligned. Great. You can see that there's a little gap in between every single item here. That's just because Flex, by default, has a gap of something. So there's already a gap inside here. So if I were to do, say, gap of 0, then now there's no space in between. But I want to customize HStack to, I don't want to use the word gap necessarily. I feel like the word spacing is probably a little bit more intuitive. And I'm basing that purely based on my experience with Swift UI, and which is where HStack and VStack and all that stuff comes from. So if I were to do spacing of, say, 8 by default, we just need to pass in spacing into Flex and use gap, and then we get that effect. So here, HStack, I can adjust it by doing something like spacing 0. So what we're doing effectively is we're adapting the props so that as a user of HStack, the property spacing feels a little bit more native or intuitive to HStack versus something like gap. That's all that is. Very simple so far. Let me just make one of them big. Let me make them giant again so we can see height is 300, sure. And we still get that center line, which is good. Spacing is 3. Snap, great. So now we have this. I think it's done. Oh, no. We have to account for spacer. Oh, this is a little bit tricky. So here's why it's tricky. Spacer is a component that already exists in the library. And what spacer does is we use it to kind of, well, let me jump to an example. Oh, that's huge. We need example here, controls. Yeah. So you notice how there is like a, I don't know, a 12 or 8 pixel gap in between every single one of these controls like that. So in order to achieve something like that, right? I'm just gonna write some fake CSS now. Let's say we have a thing, you have a margin bottom of, say, 8 pixels. So every single time you use a class name of a thing, let's say a thing is bound to the thing component. So every time you use this, right, there is an 8 pixel gap for every single one. But then you might be able to do something, oh, if this is the last child, then you kind of normalize the margin bottom, so now you get rid of it, something like that. So now if you have a bunch of things within a div, you kind of get that effect. Cool. And within Gutenberg, this kind of margin bottoming kind of thing is built into, I forget the exact class name, but you have something in Gutenberg called base control. And base control gives it the automatic margin bottom, but it only applies to controls. It doesn't apply to anything else. Where spacer is helpful is you're able to put arbitrary things within the spacer, like that, right? And you get that same effect, the margin bottom effect of 8 pixels. And the really nice thing about this is as a user, I don't have to care what pixel number it eventually renders to. And the pixel number is important is because the base value is a multiplier of like 4 pixels, which is the key number or the grid number used throughout this entire library. So as a user, I don't need to know the exact pixel value. It just applies margin bottom of 8 or whatever it is by default. But the nice thing about Spacer is that it has a bunch of built-in properties. Let me just jump to the Spacer component real fast here, which are shortcuts that allow you to adjust the margin and the padding for all the sides. So if I were to do something like P of 8, these are all shorthands, very, very shorthands. P basically means padding. Padding 8 times multiplier all around. PL, padding left. PR, padding right, top, bottom. There's also X and Y. If I do PX, this is left and right side. Y, top and bottom. Same thing can be applied for M. M is margin top and bottom, left, right, and all of that kind of stuff. And you'll notice a lot of CSS utility-based frameworks or functional CSS frameworks like Tachyons, Tailwinds, and now Bootstrap, and some of the other ones. They have some of these utilities baked in. Let me just check out Bootstrap. They probably have something like this. Bootstrap 5 is coming out, by the way. That's exciting. Should be something spacing. There we go. There we go. Yeah, so Bootstrap has these kind of conventions, right? M for margin, P for padding, top, bottom, left, right, X, Y, and then multipliers over here. So same kind of idea. You're just applying this kind of concept of using utilities, in this case, margin left of 1, but it's built into this spacer component. Long story short, that's what spacer is, and it's used throughout this entire thing. The interesting thing, though, is this behavior of spacer needs to be different within the context of HStack. So spacer now no longer takes care of margin. What it does is it forces elements to, it takes up space within an HStack and it forces elements to go to certain sizes. So it effectively needs to do something like this. What? Oh, sorry. There is a special component that does that. Flex block, sorry. So basically, this is what it needs to. It's not doing things because I don't know why. But flex block, that's what's supposed to snap all the items. Oh, there we go. It just slow to update. Basically, spacer needs to take the role of flex block within the context of HStack. Got it. Okay. So here is what I think we have to do. Similar to Flex, we're doing something fancy here of cloning all the children. We're looping through all the children and we're enhancing them to do certain things. I'm just going to copy that code and paste it in here because it's easy. I need some certain utilities. Get valid children from here and paste it in like that. Cool. It's fine. Children, children, there we go. I'm just going to clean up all of this just because it's a lot to go through. And let's just say all I want to do is I just want to return the child. So far, nothing happens. Nothing interesting happens. Clone children, cloned children. Yeah, great. Cool. And nothing happens, no errors. Great, this is what we're expecting. However, now I want to do something fancy where if the child is a spacer, then we need to render another component instead. Right, that's what we gotta do. Console log child. So here's what we're doing. We're looping through all the children. We can see some information about them, like what type they are and keys and all that kind of stuff. So we need to look for this very specific type. This type is a spacer. Great. So you may notice some other interesting things here. So those of you who have worked with React in a kind of advanced kind of level, where you actually drill down into all the nonsense that the framework spits out, this one is very custom. WP components key. That is not a React thing. WP is not a React thing. This is specific to this library. And how that gets added, so here it knows that this one is a spacer, is every single component within this library is hooked into a library-wide context system, so that they can be aware of each other if we need them to be. And how that's done is with this very handy higher order component called connect. And basically, you can imagine this to be a network, right? And how you get connected to this network, you connect to it. You connect and you put your component inside, bam, it gets assigned a name. The network is now aware of this component, and then other things within that network is able to tap into it, modify it, talk to it, and do whatever. It's like a social network, sure. We're connecting to the social network that is the component library. And that's how it gets this very special key. And that is how Flex is able to determine what certain, like, to figure out what kind of subcomponent it is. So here it's checking explicitly for flex block, and flex item. We have to do the same kind of thing where we're checking to see if the thing is a spacer, because if it is, we're going to do something else with it. Is spacer, has namespace, comes from here, maybe. Where does that come from? Has name? Yeah, it comes from the context. A social network has space, spacer. Right, cool. Okay, just checking in to the Zoom call. How y'all doing? I've been talking a whole heck of a lot. Hope you guys are doing okay. If you have any questions or anything, please feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. Cool. So now if I refresh, we can see that, oh, great. It was able to detect that the thing is a spacer, and it was able to log it out here. So instead of a spacer, we need to render something else. We actually need to render a flex block, like so. And basically, you kind of do this, flex block. But this won't work because I think it'll break. Yeah, it'll break. The reason why it's broken is because I think you need to actually like fire that component, like create that component so that React knows what to do with it. Cool. So we have that effect, right? If it's a spacer, then we swap that out for a flex block, and it happens automatically. But something is broken, something is mad, just because, you know, every single item within a React array of children needs to have a unique key. Makes sense to me. So we need to pass along a key, very special key. What is your key? Your key is .3. Great. So I'm just going to use that. Key is child key. Bam. Don't need index anymore. I don't think I need styles. Okay. Refresh. No complain. We get our feature where we are able to snap things on certain sides. Great. And I'm just going to remove all these borders because that's no longer needed. I'm just going to remove these. I'll keep view. There. Oh, we can't see anything. I need something with a background. Why don't I just use this background component because it has a background? Great. Oh, no. There is something here called Placeholder. Placeholder, within this component library, they're effectively skeletons, UI skeletons that you might see in something like a Twitter or Facebook. You know, when you're first loading it and you see that kind of gray rectangle that flashes, That's what a placeholder is. Has a gray something. Yeah, great. So instead of views, we'll make them placeholders. That way we can see them. Cool. Cool. We have HStack. Yay. And all of it was written without too much code, actually. It's just using Flex that we have internally, enhancing it to... We had to do a little fancy something by detecting the children and doing something fancy with it. But with that, we're able to get HStack. Cool. Let's build VStack now. Run task, make VStack. Before I do that, I'm going to export HStack in here so that I'm able to use it. HStack. Great. VStack. VStack should more or less be the same thing, but vertical. So let us see how we can do this. I have something in mind. I have something in mind of how we can do this, but I don't know if it'll work. VStack. Great. Don't need styles. VStack, what do I need to do? I need to import HStack from .HStack. Great. Here, that doesn't do anything. Great. So I'm going to check out my VStack story, which is here. And this is also the very, very cool thing about Storybook. This entire very, very thorough library. You can see how thorough it is. Let me just jump to my post where I have a bunch of doodles for systems. All this, right? All this complicated mess of a thing that I prefer not to think about because I just want to work with this. All of these very intricate, very complex systems were built purely within Storybook. It's great. It just works, and I don't have to think about it. Great. So I'm taking a look at VStack now. What we're doing with VStack is that it's basically outputting HStack. It's just using HStack. There's no change yet. So how do we get this to change? Well, the flex direction, I'm just going to add some borders again so we can see what's going on. CSS, border, 2 pixels solid, red, something. Again, red hurts my eyes. Should not be using red. Oh, and we have. So on a couple of calls already, I've explained the CSS system, but so Sean, I apologize. I'm going to repeat myself. But with folks who aren't aware, I'm going to jump into the CSS real fast. So there is this very special compiler within this library, and it does it on render. So that means that the styles are able to be portable with the components, allowing the user that implements them. They don't have to set up like Webpack. They don't have to do any of that kind of pre-configgy stuff. Zero config, styles work out of the box. There's a very special compiler that does, well, first of all, it does this, where it compounds the class names like 8 times. And the reason why it does that, automatically, by the way, is to boost the specificity of these class names to ensure that when you use these particular components within an environment with CSS styles, that hopefully this will override that. And you can actually specify the amount of times you want this to compound. I believe 8 is the setting right now, but you can change it to like 156 if you wanted to. And you get 156 compounded class names automatically. Super, super strong. The other interesting thing is if I'm writing CSS inline like this, it's not the same as if I were to do inline styles. Because inline styles, what they do is that it injects inline styles like this, which is very difficult for you to customize or override, just because inline styles are very, very, very specific. So here, for this very specific, for this very special CSS property, it actually compiles down to here. It knows how to compile like and do very fancy things with the CSS compiler so that everything essentially compiles down to class names. In this case, it's a very specific class name that is guaranteed not to conflict with anything else. That's the other special thing about this. Again, making it easier to integrate within existing systems. Anywho, that is the CSS compiler. And we're going to highlight with that. That is all that. See all this, see all this nonsense that's in yellow? That's all that at work. And me working at the component library layer, not at the core system CSS compiler layer, I don't know how to think about it. And I prefer not to have to think about this most of the time. I mean, doing stuff with CSS compiler, it's fun, but again, I just want to work here because this to me is mostly nonsense most of the time. Okay, what do I want to do? Oh yeah, VStack. I want these to align vertically. So Flex has a very special property. Let me make this a little bigger so we can see. Called Flex Direction. And we have column, we have row. So if I just switch, by default, I believe it's row. But if I switch it to column, if I jump here, whoa, look at that. We have VStack. Kinda. The reason why I say kinda is, well, where'd my spacer go? The spacer's nowhere. The reason why spacer is nowhere is because there is no available space to take up inside of VStack. If I were to make this height, say 2000, I believe that, yeah, there we go. There we have some space. So yeah, I just need to flip, essentially, I just need to flip flex direction from row to column. So I can kind of do this, flex direction column. And now we should have VStack. Great. Oh, I'm just gonna add the border back in. Border 3 pixel solid, black. Cool. So now we have VStack. I'm just gonna make the height a little bit bigger so we can see the spacer in between. Height is calc 100 VH plus a little bit extra. What am I doing? What am I doing? Don't need to math this. I just need to use that. Great, cool. Great. So now we have something like this. The Zoom UI is getting in my way a little bit. But yeah, so now we have VStack, spacer is being considered, and things are aligning vertically. There's something wrong though. And I'm going to highlight that by changing the spacing from 3 to 30. The thing that is wrong, you will see right here. All of these, they have margin rights on them. The reason why there's margin rights on them is because, remember our old friend, in this case, VStack is using HStack and HStack is using Flex. Our old friend Flex, right? Flex automatically adds margins to the right-hand side and normalizes the last one to any Flex item or Flex block. That's just how it works. And it does it, and it wraps these guys, and that's kind of how it does it. Which is fine, right? Margin, right? 30 or whatever it is. That's kind of how we want for HStack because things need to have a space horizontally. But for VStack, it needs to happen vertically. In this case, it needs to be margin bottom. So we have to do some sort of adjustments so that instead of doing margin right, it'll be margin bottom. And a hacky way to do it would be to do something like this. Whoops. Every child, margin right, none, sorry, 0, margin bottom. I'm just gonna write this very quickly. So you can do something like this. This, in theory, this would work, but this is, again, bad because you're targeting arbitrary items that appear as children. You don't want to do that. You're assuming that they are flex items and flex blocks, and you're cutting off the margins on the right, and you're randomly injecting margin bottoms on the bottom. Unfortunately, if you don't have context-aware kind of components in this kind of setup, this is kind of what we have to do within the world of pure CSS. And what you're hoping is that the markup that appears within this parent component that absorbs these styles, you're hoping that it'll always follow the best case scenario, which depending on the kind of platform or application or website that you're building, if you have a lot of control, then you'll mostly be fine. But if you have something that is very user editable, like, I don't know, Gutenberg or WordPress, where you can't reliably predict what may be injected or what may not be injected, then targeting arbitrary things like this is dangerous. Not dangerous, but this leads to a lot of headache and things kind of blow up and stuff. We have that kind of stuff, unfortunately, all the time. So yeah, we cannot do this. So what we're saying basically is, well, the logic I'm kind of saying we need for a VStack is use HStack, which uses Flex, right? Our old friend Flex here. But instead of adding margin to the right, add it to the bottom instead. And I guess we can do something like similar to HStack, where we're looping through all the children, and then maybe we're looking for flex items or something, and then we enhance them in that way. So we could do this, but we don't have to. And the reason why we don't have to is because I've done that already within Flex. Flex knows how to do this. And thank goodness for that, because I don't want to write this all over again. Flex is directionally aware, vertically or horizontally. And depending on the direction you give it, whether it's column or row, it will apply the gap accordingly to the right or to the bottom. So what that means is within VStack here, I just have to do this. I think. I may be wrong. I don't know. Get rid of that. No, that is wrong. HStack column direction. Maybe I have the API wrong. This is where I wish I had docs. And the reason why I haven't written docs for this whole thing yet is because all the props and everything is still very much in flux as I try to figure things out. So what is the problem? The problem is direction includes column. What?
Sorry.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Did you have a question or comments or anything?
No, and I'm saying it's an array. Direction expects an array.
That is true. I mean, does this work? Hang on. String hello includes hello. It works for strings. So I mean that technically should work. So console log. I'm just gonna do a quick is column. Oh, this is so fun. I get like live debugging and pairing help. This is great. So I'm expecting this to be, why is it undefined? That's not what I'm expecting. Oh, I get it. Okay. So here's there's a very interesting nuance here. This one is using a very special property called use responsive value. This is built into the styling system. And what this actually gives you is the ability to do something like this. I'm just going to use this example for now. Direction. And as Mohammed pointed out, it's an array. And this array actually maps to breakpoints. What I mean by that is there are 3 arguments that you can give it. What these 3 arguments represent: mobile, tablet, desktop. So what I can do in theory is I can do something like this. Mobile will use row. If I pass it null, then null kind of inherits from whatever it was previously. So, and I can do something like this. Mobile will use row, tablet will use row, desktop will use column. Ultimately, this compiles down to media queries, and then you kind of get that feature set, or rather get that behavior by writing very, very, very little, which is great because whenever possible, at least from a style perspective, you want to control and limit the amount of CSS, custom CSS that a user has to write. Just because depending on how it is they write it and how the system is implemented and how things are compiled and blah, 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 that writing custom CSS is basically the user saying, oh, I'm going to diverge from whatever it is the system supports by writing my own custom stuff. So eventually, you know, as code bases grow and things grow over time, if something underlaying the component or whatever it is changes the style, right? The divergence that this has created may break. And a lot of the time, when people are fixing UI issues, they're not adding new features. They're fixing these divergences, which I guess you kind of have to. But if you can avoid having divergences to begin with, or create a system where divergence is understood, in this case this is, because it understands how to compile the CSS with everything else, then divergence is controlled. And when divergence is controlled, then it's managed in a way that can scale elegantly over time. Anywho, CSS systems. Let's figure out why this thing isn't working. Use responsive value. Let's see, console log. What is this thing? Console log direction. I might have to adjust that. It is undefined. Why is it undefined? Because it's not an array. Okay, well, I'm so glad I have this illustration. So here's what we're doing right now. We have to dive into this a little bit because this use responsive value thing comes from the style system. And it wants to do something where it's like, oh, if the thing you're giving it is not an array, then don't do your fancy media query stuff. Just give me the value back. So let's dive into the style system. There. And this is kind of close to, what layer is it? Hopefully you can see my mouse. It's kind of close to here if I were to draw a box. So we started off over here. This is the happy zone. This is kind of where we want to be, right? This is where things are easy. This is where things are simple. But now we have to dive into this kind of compile-y area. Styles, jumping to the style system, which is here, styles, and it's a hook, and the hook is use responsive value. And all the things you're seeing here is not something I've written. It's something that I've kind of borrowed from a styling system / library called Theme UI, which is starting to gain adoption, which is great. There are things about this that I like and some things that I don't. Underneath the hood, it uses emotion, which is the same thing as this particular library. But yeah, there are certain things about it that I need to modify, which is why this code now lives here. Use responsive value. If it's not an array, then return values. Wait, I already did that. So why is this not? Hang on. I don't like this. There's something about, oh, wait. HStack. Props. I'm passing down the props to, oh my goodness. I think I know why. Is it, oh, no, I'm passing down. Direction is row. Why do I not see row here? Wait, there it is. No, it's all undefined. It's all undefined because it's trying to render a bunch of other components, and I kind of wish Storybook didn't do that. Oh well. Okay, where am I? I don't know where I am. I'm gonna close all my tabs because I can't even right now. Flex, JS, great. Okay, if direction prop. So I'm only gonna console log if that thing exists. That way it controls the noise a little bit. Okay, it's a row. Cool. And is it a column? It's not, which makes sense because it's not a column. Great. So if it's not a column, then it needs to render a certain way or something like that. Okay, cool. Why is this particular style not vertically-ing? It needs to render flex direction. Oh my goodness. Face palm myself. It needs to be column, not there we go. It's done. Jesus. Oh, so that works. I got things reversed. It needs to be a row, not a column. It's fine. It works. It's great. It knows how to add margin bottoms and well, whatever. And then there we go. We have VStack. And VStack was created basically by using HStack with one minor modification. HStack now uses Flex. So jumping back to here, we have VStack, we have HStack. Yay! Without having to write a lot, which is great. I am going to adjust some things. I'm going to get rid of this guy. I'm going to get rid of spacing so we can, whoops, a little bit of sanity back into this guy. What is going on? The spacing is tremendous in between all these things. That's not what I'm expecting, is it? Margin bottom of 32. Why is that? Why does it have a margin bottom of 32? I removed the spacing. Nope. There is something funky going on here. I'm just going to check my HStack. This is fine. This is less fine. So I'm guessing there's something within Flex that is messing it up. Gap value. Let me just double check what this thing is. If is not is column console log gap value. What? Oh, dang it. Not arrays. I need this one. Great. Cool. What are you? What are you? 8. Right. So I'm expecting it to have 8 pixels. But why is it 36? 36 divided by 8 is 4.5. Numbers aren't making sense right now. There's something with the styles that is not happy. Gap is getting a gap is margin bottom column not last and gap. Just gotta double check something. Wait a second. Why are all of these guys blocks? That's not right. These ones should not be blocks. Well, that's kind of wrong, and then that's also wrong. Let me just double check something as well. Why do these guys have all these random margin bottoms? That is something I need to figure out. That's not cool. Well, HStack was working. It's a great way to debug. You just put borders on everything. Call it a solid pink. There's like a random spacing in between these guys. I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like what's going on. We're so close. My goodness. Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of some items so that it's less hectic. Yeah, there's like randomly 32 spacing for all those guys. I'm just gonna do spacing is 0. Hang on. HStack spacing is 8. Well, maybe that's why. Maybe it's because I gave it a default value of something absurd. Spacing, what should this be? By default, space between each item probably is a 2. VStack spacing is 0, so now it's passing into HStack. HStack will get spacing of 2, passing into Flex as a gap. Okay. But still, there is an absurd amount of margin or something somewhere. No, there's no margin anymore, but it is taking up all the space. And the reason why it's doing that is because there's a flex of 1 for some random reason. Why is it flexing of 1? Oh, I think I know why. Because there's something in here that I think I made it do it. I made it do that. Is column is last. display prop display. Let me just check the styles. Block. So the thing that gives it a flex of 1 is ultimately this block style, right? Flex of 1. And it gets applied here, styles, I think. There we go. Oh, right. If it's column or if it's block, we want to do that. No thanks. We'll do this instead. If it's a block, then we'll do that. Now that should be eliminated. Yes, thank goodness. Great, cool, that works. So just a minor adjustment inside of the core flex file. Again, we're gonna draw the stack trace. VStack uses HStack, HStack uses flex, flex uses view. Cool. So with that, I think we have VStack here. And just to confirm, I'm going to add a random spacer in between these guys, like so. And it should snap like that. Top, bottom, in between. Snap. Yep. Cool, cool. I'm going to get rid of these ones. Get rid of that. Get rid of all those arbitrary somethings. Let's just restore that spacing to 2. And there we go. VStack. For funsies, let's see if we can combine them together. First, I am going to export VStack. VStack, like so. Whoops, down here. So now other parts in the library, you're able to access it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to HStack from HStack. So for this particular story, I'm just going to play around to see if I can combine using VStack and HStack together. So what do I want to do? Let's say I want to, I don't know. Oh, wait, I need spacer again. I need a UI to recreate. Let's say I want to recreate this thing, right? This whole thing. We have a couple of buttons. We have a title here. We have a little badge thing. We have some text, and we have some stuff down there. Yeah, let's do all that. Let's go. What do we need? We need, well, I guess we don't need VStack here, but that's fine. We need, that's a title. We have a heading component. So we have some text. We can add a text component. We have some buttons. We're going to have a button component. We have a badge, tag, something. I don't know. There's a generic lozenge component that can take care of that. So now we have that. Great. So let us recreate this using HStack essentially, because VStack, we don't need VStack to do that. HStack. So first we need title, muted title thingy, and some buttons. So, just need a view as well. So we need groupings of things, right? That's one group. That's another group. We have a group of buttons right here. It's in reverse. So edit, and new issue. And here we have a title saying components, all that stuff. Great. Heading, all this stuff. Let's see what happens. Cool. So now we have that. We have to just change the justification a little bit. It would be it would be space between. So now it should snap to the ends like so. But I'm going to adjust the max width a bit so it doesn't take up the whole thing, because that's kind of too much. Max width is 800, something like that. Great. And I'm just going to margin auto so it can center it. Snaps in the middle. Great. But this guy is a little bit muted, right? Okay, that's muted. Also, the what do you call it? The size is bigger. H2. Great. That might be a little bit too tiny. We're going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap that inside of a text component, and text has a variant of muted So now we get, hold on. I know what happened. I don't like this. So this is something I gotta improve a little bit. The reason why the text shrunk in that way, text variant of muted. The reason why this happened is because the text component, which seems like a very simple thing, it actually does quite a lot. It renders components or renders textual content with defaults, that being the font size, the base font size for the library, normalizes margins, color, and all that kind of stuff. The reason why some seemingly simple like color is baked into text is so that it can get dark mode out of the box. So when I change dark mode, it changes from black to white, and it's based on a CSS variable. And this tiny detail is actually really important for the entire library, because this whole thing was designed in a way where you can import like little components or big components, text, VStack, or whatever the case may be, in a way where the styles that are being generated will not disrupt or destroy your existing application styles. Typically, component libraries, especially ones that rely on like importing of style sheets, whether that's Sass or CSS, like a React Bootstrap or something similar, they have globals, right? Like wildcard, make everything box sizing border box, make link colors a certain something. So if you were to import a component library that has globals like this, or resets of that kind of in this kind of way, the chances of this conflicting with your existing style sheets is very high. And personally, from my experience, I've learned that what seems to be like all CSS code bases should have this, box sizing border box, which has become convention. That's not the case. The last company I worked at, the main application, they didn't have this as a normalizer, right? And because the initial attempt I had at a component library or a CSS framework included this broke everything. Not in production, but on the initial, integration attempt, this broke everything. So we have to be very careful. We cannot assume globals exist, right? Whatever properties a particular component needs, whether it's VStack, text, button, or anything else, it needs to be bundled together with a component like here. So here we have text. Every single component within this library, which ultimately uses view underneath the hood, has box sizing border box attached to it. It's not a global. It's not a global, wildcard, everything gets it. It has that. Font family is assigned to text. Font size is using the library's global font size and so on. So that way, we can ensure safe integration with this component with your existing application, platform, Gutenberg, whatever the case may be. Anywho, that was a long kind of thing that describes the decisions, the architecture decisions behind a seemingly simple component that is text. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to, don't mind me, just going to do this real fast. Opacity 0.5, and this will work, and I can render this as a span. Now I should get, oh, why is it still small? I don't like this. Oh, it's using stupid font size inherit. Yeah, let's do that. Sure, why not? That works. For now, this is a for now, and like even going through this very simple exercise where I'm just trying to recreate this, like I don't like this. I don't like having to do this. So I have to change something within the text component or the heading component or something that allows for people to recreate UIs like this without having to write kind of not so nice stuff like that. Anyway, buttons. This one is a primary. This one is not. So this one is variant primary. Primary. This one is not. Cool. But we notice that there's no spacing between these guys. Hang on, I'm going to change the color. What color should I make the primary theme today? I change this every now and then just for funsies. Call out a color.
Green.
Green. Yeah, let's make it green. Cool. Let's also go dark to save our eyeballs. Let's go dark. Yay, now it looks like Spotify.
The Matrix.
Yeah, so we need to add some spacing in between these guys. Well, you could add inline CSS, margin right or whatever it is, or let's use HStack. Great. So now we have items that look like that without having to write CSS. Gap or spacing or whatever it is automatically taken care of for us. Now we have a collection of those. These ones are vertically aligned with each other, I hope. Nope, something is not right. Something is not vertically aligning, I don't think. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just the line height of the titles are a little bit something. It's always so hard to tell. Let me just change the font size to something gigantic so I can tell. Oh yeah, it's vertically aligned. It's just, I don't know, maybe the certain pixel that something does not look right. I'm also zoomed in, I think. Oh yeah, that might have been it. I was just zoomed in all the way. Change this to 3 to make that a little bit smaller. Okay. Cool. So now let's build this one underneath it. HStack, we have another collection of stuff. I'm just going to add in the lozenge for now. Lozenge, what do you say? You say open. That's what you say. Great. I forgot the API for lozenge. Pardon me. Color. Yeah. Color is green. Yay. Oh, check this out. I don't know if you can see this. You notice that this green lozengey thingy has stripy backgrounds? That's because lozenge and anything else that uses certain background colors, they have colorblind support built in. And this is built into the library at a core level, I think. I'm going to jump back here. There. Colorblind is built into the system and the theming system and all that kind of goodness. And that's great. And colorblind stuff, I think I have the colorblind simulator here. This is kind of hard to see. I still have to adjust it for dark mode. But for certain kind of color blindnesses, red, yellow, and green are difficult to distinguish between each other. And if you have if you have certain UIs that rely on color like red, yellow, green as signifiers, typically things like alerts and whatever the case may be, then those signifiers are lost in communication because the user cannot see the color. So let me jump into this real fast. References, backgrounds. Yeah. So for certain colors, red, yellow, and green, they have different patterns, right? So depending on the color blindness, this is tweaked so that regardless of what, if you can see full color, if you can't, if you have certain color blindnesses, you're able to distinguish between each one of these things based on the pattern that you see and the contrast and the hue and so on. So yeah, color blindness is built right in. That's nice. Let's jump back into here. That's why this little lozenge thing is striped. So now we have some text saying open blah blah blah. So I'm just going to copy that. And we have a collection of text together. Right? Username has done things. So we have a text saying username, and then we have another text saying something else. But this one is bold, so we do font weight bold. I believe that works. But we need some spacing in between each one. Why don't we use HStack? Yeah, put these in HStack. Something's not right. Oh, right. Because, well, this one also needs to go into HStack. And I want the alignment of that to justify flex start. Great. And we need a little bit more spacing between this chunk, and that chunk down there. So what we can do, let's use it. Oh wait, our friend VStack comes in handy here. VStack, VStack's there, yeah. There we go. That might be a little bit too much spacing, maybe. I don't know. Hang on, I'm turning off this colorblind thing because it's difficult to see. Cool. So without having to write any CSS at all, with the exception of this little guy, we're able to create this layout very quickly just by combining HStack, VStack together to align items in certain ways like this. And oh my goodness, like I'm used to this by now just because I've used Flex for so many years. Flex, by the way, is the thing that powers VStack and HStack. But I so remember the first time that that I got Flex working in this capacity, and we're starting to roll this component out throughout at the time it was an Ember application. It was like a life-changing thing because you didn't have to arbitrarily write Flex CSS in places, right? Like margins in places to spacings apart. This thing kind of takes care of everything. And you can see here, like I was able to recreate this UI, automatic vertical alignment, automatic spacing that aligns to the grid system and all that kind of stuff, just by using HStack and VStack. It's great. Yeah, so that's HStack and VStack. The last one I got to take care of is ZStack. ZStack is going to be fun. And ZStack, I'm just going to whiteboard code some stuff. ZStack works very, very differently compared to HStack, VStack. It's not trying to align things like, in a row or in columns or anything. These items have to align on top of each other, right? So if you had a collection of 1, 2, 3, then effectively you would see 3 because 2 is underneath, 1 is underneath. And Z indexes also have to be automatically assigned to each one of these. So this one gets a Z index of 0, maybe. This one gets a Z index of 1, and so on. And this is great because that, similar to what we have for HStack and VStack, it saves the user from having to manage this kind of thing, right? The component just takes care of it for you. So let's create a brand new component, ZStack. This one's going to be interesting. I can't use Flex for this, so I have to jump into here. Like HStack and VStack, ultimately they're using Flex underneath the hood. ZStack, I have to kind of start from view, which is fine. It's fine. I just have to figure it out. Import view from // ZStack. I'm gonna put some stuff in here. Oh no, placeholder is a better one. So we can see colors. Placeholder, placeholder. If I can type, come on, placeholder 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. If I jump to ZStack, which should be here. Great, I'm gonna check out that story. Cool. So now I see 1, 2, 3 like that. That's not what I want. I need it to stack on top of each other. So, man, what needs to happen really is this needs to happen. Position, I'm just gonna const item styles. I'm just writing this in line real fast. Position absolute Z index of 0, I guess. So every one of these needs to have something like this, where they are positioned on top of each other, and this one has a CSS of position relative. So now they're stacked on top of each other, in theory. There we go, yeah. I'm also gonna adjust it a little bit so that it centers it, so it's easier to work with. Style, margin, auto. Okay, hopefully this centers. Well, it complains because I don't have view. Yep, it makes sense to me. Needs a view. It's just, it doesn't work. Well, that doesn't work. Why don't this work? Oh, well, probably because I need to add this here. Maybe, I don't know. Something like that. No, it's still not happy. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, this is actually probably helpful because I think this changing the display to inline flex rather than a block may be something that helps Z-stacking. I don't know. So something's not happy with this, and I got to figure out what it is. I think I kind of know what it is. Display is that, and let's just say width is 30. I think it needs to have a fixed width or something, and then maybe. No, it's still not happy. Hang on. Height 30. Background red. Okay, box. Right? I see you there. Why aren't you snapping to the middle? Something about this. I don't like it. Oh, right, because I had all that stuff there. Okay, never mind. Get rid of this. Width 30. Height 30. Sure. Let's just have that for now. Okay, so now we have that in the middle. I think these are important details. Not necessarily the margin part, but like we need the items for a ZStack to start in the center and stack on top of each other. So the parent somehow needs to figure out how to do that with CSS, but it's fine. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that part out. You're going to change the padding to something 30. So 30, so it's a little bit bigger. Border ones black. Oh, no. 3 pixels. Okay, so now we have great. But what actually needs to happen is also this. The index of 0, the index of 1, the index of 2. That way they're stacked on top of each other. There is no difference because nothing changes yet. But here's where we can do something interesting. Top minus 10. So now this can peak. If I do transform, what is it? Rotate 15 deg, I think. Yeah, so we have that. And I'm going to apply the same thing here. But this top is a little bit different. Minus 20 now. Minus that? I don't know. We kind of get the, yeah, so now we get that kind of stacky effect that you can get with ZStack. So these like top minus and these transform styles, this one I think should be custom, right? The items that appear within, they need to be the ones to say, hey, I want to, offset a little bit. I need to rotate a little bit. That's fine. What ZStack needs to do is ZStack needs to assign the Z indexes to every single one of these ones. That's what this one's automated. Okay. Cool. So we have something like this. Similar to how VStack, HStack, and Flex work, right? Flex ultimately uses Flex. If you were to inject a div within Flex, Flex automatically wraps it with a Flex item. Like so. So for ZStack, I think we kind of need to do the same thing. Change that to ZStack item. And ZStack item will inline style. I think inline style is fine. Yeah. This one needs to receive a Z index of the child index that we're looping through. So let's give that a shot. Why not? Let's just give that a shot. I'm just going to copy some code from HStack for the child looping bit. Okay. Cool. ZStack view. And we are, so far this code is going to break because this is nonsense. you can't do this. I will fix it. Linter, stop being mad at me. I promise I'll fix it. Okay. The children, and I clone children. I do fancy things with children, and I return something. Cloned children. All right, cool. And well, no. Get valid children. Where's that coming from? I think it's coming from utils. From VP G2 utils. I don't know. I am just gonna render it within a div. Child. So now every child is wrapped within a div and it's fine. Another interesting detail. This is done very purposefully. At the component library layer, so if I were to jump to this illustration, at this layer, right? There's always utilities that this thing needs to use to sanitize strings, to do math thing with numbers or whatever the case may be. And typically, within, like for certain component libraries, if you were to drill down and take a look, you will see like they'll use dependencies from arbitrary packages. So like if I were to do uppercase from Lodash, and if I were to do like something else from another library, you'll see a lot of these guys like up here. And then you'll see a lot of different library names, which is fine. That's typically how it works. But the decision I made for this thing is any one of these arbitrary utility functions, uppercase, array sort, or anything like that, all of it should come from the internal utilities package, which, I mean, this thing will export those packages. Like here it's using Lodash and certain other ones. But it just, I feel like it keeps the code a lot cleaner just because you're being very cognizant of what utilities are being used or what dependencies you're bringing in, what it is you're populating throughout the entire library. And it's, I don't know. For me, I like being able to import a bunch of utilities from a single library that I know, version is correct and all that stuff, rather than having to npm install like 10 different dependencies and having the imports coming from 10 different places. That's just me. Anywho, if I were to take a look at ZStack, this is no longer valid because I think oh, no, it should still work. If I were to take a look at the code here, right. So now you can see that there is a div wrapper around every single one of those items. Just let me just data ZStack. Yeah, data. True. Very important data attribute, by the way. Then we should see, yeah, great. So it's wrapping every single one. The key is being passed properly, I hope, so that there does not complain. There is a console log of something, a stray console log coming from Flex. Let me just get rid of that. Yeah, whoopsies. So no console logs, no complaints, no warnings, and things are wrapped properly in my guy. So effectively what needs to happen is something like this. So I'm just going to use arbitrary divs for now. Style, it needs a z index of index. Okay, so take a look at this. Right, automatic z index injection based on order. 0, 1, 2, 3 for every single child. Great. There are some other things I need to add. Position absolute as well. And with that, I can get rid of position absolute z index of 0. I can get rid of that because ZStack is taking care of that for me. Great. So now they're stacked on top of each other like so. Cool. Maybe this is all I need to do. I don't know. Maybe. Well, what other custom things? Oh yeah. So each placeholder, I want to do something fancy with it. So I think this is fine. Like you as a placeholder or whatever items, you need to declare your own position relative if you want to do something fancy with position or whatever it is. Yeah, so now you get that card staggery kind of look. So now we're able to stack things on top of each other. But man, off the top of my head, I don't know of an example of this other than here, other than the application that I worked on, this guy. So 5 avatars. So this one, oh man, I remember working on this. So you notice how the one in the middle is actually the highest one, right? It's on top of everything else. And these ones are kind of underneath it, and these ones are kind of underneath it, right? So there's some fancy math that needed to happen where you have avatars 1, 2, 3, 4, let's pretend. And based on the amount of avatars you inject into it, whether it's even or odd, more than 2 or more than 1 or whatever the case may be. So here it knows that this one is the middle. Therefore, the Z index of this one, ZI, needs to be 3. These ones, or sorry, 2 maybe. These ones need to have 1. And this one needs to be 0. Right? So yeah, Z stacking, you should be able to have, I mean, maybe not this one, because this one's a little bit custom where things in the middle can somehow be on top of other things. But for more common implementations of avatars that I know of, where avatars kind of stack on top of each other in a row, they shouldn't all stack on top of each other like this, right? It needs to be next to each other. They just happen to kind of, have a little bit of a margin, minus margin. So you kind of get that stacking effect. But ZStack should manage the Z index for all these different items. How do I do that? I don't know. Well, the thing that determines when all of these guys stack on top of each other, that is position absolute. So that effectively needs to be a property. The hard part is I need to name it something. I don't know. Stacked is stacked. Well, they're always stacked. I don't know what the position. No, position. I don't want that particular property name because it's. I don't know. It doesn't make sense in this context. If you have any ideas, please shout it out. This is often the hardest part. What do I call this thing? So basically what I want is like, I don't know, is stacked on top of each other. This is a terrible property name, but I'll name it something else when I can. By default, it is true. So if it's stacked on top of each other, then the position needs to be absolute. Otherwise, the position needs to be relative. Hang on. To do, please rename this. There we go. A little dev notes for myself. Okay. So where am I? Is stacked on top of each other. Yeah. So is false, right? So now they should not stack. Oh, cool. Now they don't stack on top of each other. They are kind of doing this thing. I don't want that to happen. I want them to be inline, which kind of means that ZStack view probably needs to be a display of flex. Probably. Cool. So now we have that. Great. Now this is, here's another thing that's interesting. So when things were stacking on top of each other, right? 1, 2, and 3, it's fine that the last one is the the most on topest thing. I'm running out of words to describe the things I'm trying to build. It's the most on topest, right? But when things are fanned out in this fashion, 1, 2, and 3, maybe this is okay. But if I were to try to recreate, the stacking avatars, I kind of want 1 to be the highest Z index. So when things are stacking on top of each other, we have the first item, we have the second item, we have the third item. And the Z index of this one is 0, Z index of this one is 1, Z index of this one is 2. So if we're is fanning out, then the Z index actually needs to be reversed, like so.
It seems kind of like a design decision. GitHub does the opposite, actually.
Yeah, so I think there should be a property is reversed is false. So the user is able to determine the stacking order that they want, whether it's by default, less to the greatest, or they can reverse it greatest to least. So how we can determine that is Z index. Thanks for chiming in, Sean. That was awesome. I need to get the total amount of children. Const children count is valid children length. Z index is, if it's reversed, then that means it is this minus index, otherwise index. I may be off by a single number. I'm not sure. We'll see. So right now it's 1, 2, 3. Nothing's broken. But if I were to reverse it, where is it? Here. Is reversed. We should get 1, 2, 3. Yay! So very easily we can do that. That's cool. These guys looks like they're dancing. So I'm gonna get rid of that. Why is it still being weird? Oh no, it just takes some time to update. Yeah, so now we can, let me just like create some fake avatars. Well, one second. Placeholder, the width is 30. What are some avatar sizes? 48. Height is 48. And the style, a border, radius, an absurd amount. Yeah, cool. So that's an avatar, quote, avatar. Copy and paste that a couple times. And I'm gonna bring in these item styles here. Item styles, and we need a margin left of -2, maybe. So now we get the, oh no, oh no. Oh, you can't see stuff. Border is 2 pixels solid black. That doesn't work. What the heck? Margins are here, right? Maybe it needs to be bigger. Oh yeah, it just needs to be bigger. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. So now you get stacking avatar things. If you choose to do that. The tricky thing though is like, let me just make this margin 20. If you choose to create a UI like this, then the container has to have like the opposite amount of margin on, or sorry, padding on that side so that things don't get cut off. So they start kind of at the beginning like that. An old CSS grid trick using margin and padding offsets. Anywho, so yeah, with this Z stacking
the first
thing.
Child thing that we did earlier there, instead of doing like a negative or
extra
margin on the.
So here's a very interesting
control you mentioned.
Design decision. Should ZStack be responsible for like this margin lefting offset stuff? Because if it is, if we feel like it should be, then we need to build that kind of thing into the child looping part so that it can automatically inject it. If not, then the things aside, they have to kind of have to figure it out. I think if we were to do to stack in a way where things are not on top of each other, again, this is a terrible name. I feel like ZStack should try to do this for you. We can change this in the future, but I feel like, yeah, like I shouldn't have to kind of do this. So what can we call it? Offset. We'll just call that offset. So it's a terrible name. I'm just going to write this in line real fast. Padding left if they are not stacked on top of each other. Use this offset, otherwise don't use any offset. And here we have to use the offset. Oh, sorry. Again, this is like a margin left. If not stacked on top of each other, then you need the offset times -1 because you need it to be negative. So now, in theory, offset is 20. Bang. Yay. Magic. Kinda. Wait, this is, I knew it was one number off. This one needs to actually be like a -1. No, this one needs to be -1. There we go. It feels less awful. Cool. So we can do that. Let me just, are there views here? Yeah, there's a view here. Cool. Put that here. Let me have another ZStack here, but I will not reverse it just to kind of see what it looks like. Yeah, so you can do that or that. Let me add some spacers. So we have some space in between some stuff. Spacer. And this is, and what I'm doing right now, where I'm just like, oh, I need a little adjustment, or I need a little component, or I need a little something. That's how I feel like the dev workflow should be, right? Especially for like UI or layout adjustments. I shouldn't have to write CSS to like add little margin bottoms and things. It's like, oh, I need space after something. I'll just add this guy. Oh, I need things to stack a certain way. I'll use ZStack. Then that is my kind of dream ideal workflow. So I'm going to add another ZStack down here, but this one, I'm going to make them stack on top of each other. So offset now does nothing. Just see how it looks. Things are complaining because I have bad code. That's why it's complaining. Right. That makes sense because they're all the transforms or whatever, they're all the same. They're all stacked on top of each other. That one fans out. That one fans out in the opposite direction. Cool. I feel like ZStack is done. Is there another little feature we can add to this, or you think that might be handy? I try something. Const. This is me having fun now. Const avatar is this. That way I don't have to write this like 6 different times. Or not 6, but like a lot of different times. Great. So these are all avatars now. These are all the last airbenders now. And I want this to happen.
Would you handle things like elevation, like like box shadows, as like a separate thing, or would this?
I feel like it should be a separate thing.
Okay.
I think. Because, I mean, I don't know. Like, I wish there was a GitHub example. Like, where can I find the GitHub UI for this?
Or maybe not the CSS, but just like the, because I don't know how you would queue off the Z index, like the actual layering for a separate type system to handle it for you, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Let me just try something. So inside of this component library, there is something called elevation, which gives you some shadows. Let's see what this looks like. By default, I think it's a box, so you might see some boxes. Or you might not see anything at all because I broke it. Oh, right, the value is none, but by default, value of 3. Yeah, so we have some boxes. Border radius, is it? 99999. Border radius, yeah. Cool, so now we have some elevation. This might be kind of hard to tell. I'm gonna make the value a little bit bigger. Something absurd, 10. That's pretty absurd. Yeah. So here is the, I mean, I'm just gonna say it's pretty cool that I was able to do this pretty quickly. And I'm
I was gonna say it's kind of cool that it kind of like almost works.
It almost works.
The hover effect actually really helps fake it.
Yeah. You can actually disable the hover effect, I think. Yeah, it's interactive. So by default, it does hovers, but you can disable that. So I'm going to disable that for now. I guess there may be a case where, like, if you hover over a certain item, like this one, it then needs to, like, now be on top. You know what I mean? Maybe?
The way GitHub does it is when you hover over them, they actually spread out.
Oh my goodness. Really?
Yeah, there. Yeah, if you see right there, you have a
Oh.
down towards the bottom of your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It might only be in notifications, actually. Oh no, there it goes. Yeah, it's doing it. I'm sorry, I have a delay on my connection.
Yeah. I'm so glad you pointed this out. Let's build this. Why not? Let us build this. This is a perfect use case for it. Okay, cool. I'm building GitHub avatars.
I'm totally cool. Like I'm having a blast watching you, but I want you to know you're going on like 2 hours here. This is gonna be a long video.
I'm fine. I'm really grateful you guys are still tuning in for me, like, playing around with this stuff. Hopefully it's been helpful so far. I don't know if I've just been, like, rambly for 2 hours. Thumbs up?
No,
cool.
It's been great. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
It's like a masterclass watching you work.
Thank you. Even though I have times where I can't think of names, so now things are just named is stacked on top of each other.
It just makes you human, Q.
Yeah, it does. Let me just change this to 3, so it's not so absurd. So, how do we make things spread when the user hovers into a thing? I think this is outside the scope of ZStack, but I think that use case is helpful in seeing how we can push this. So we need something that tracks state. So I'm going to just do const GitHub avatars. Const is hover, set is hover, use state false. This can return a ZStack with a bunch of stuff. Return ZStack GitHub avatars. Great, cool. Use state is complaining because I haven't imported. Yep, use state. Great, cool. All right, so the offset is a little bit, oh no, they're pretty tight. So I need to track whether or not I'm hovering over something. I guess, I mean, in this library you can do, I mean, with React, what you'd have to do is you'd have to do something like on mouse enter, on mouse leave, and you track that kind of stuff, which is annoying, I must say. Underneath the hood, the animation library uses framer motion. I'm going to jump into here. Have not outlined that part here, but here, yeah. This is a gesture system that is typically either built into or complementary to an animation system. Gesture systems typically pay attention to, well, it applies a lot to mobile, like tapping and long holding, dragging, things like that. Dragging, you do that on desktop as well. But usually with gesture systems, they provide some sort of hover event that you can tap into, which is great because I hate having to write on mouse enter, on mouse leave, tracking that kind of stuff. It's very verbose and it's annoying. So I would prefer not having to do that. Framer Motion, I believe, has that built in. We will see. If it doesn't, then I will figure it out. While hover. Okay, while hover, it does something, but can I do like while on hover? On hover, start, on hover, end. Cool. Yeah, let's give it a shot. So the animation view is called animated. It comes from here. Let's put it on here. So now we can use animated, which is underneath the hood. It's a Framer component to pay attention to hover interactions, which I wish was built into web by default, but it's not. Hover, start, and what do? Set is hover, true. Hover, end. Set is hover, false. Okay. Console log is hover. Let's just see if this thing works. Oh yeah, it works. It was just complaining about something else. True, false, great. Cool. So what do we actually need to do? We need to do const is offset is hover, then 0, otherwise 20. This is very rough, but we'll see how it goes. Look at that. Look at that shot. But the thing is, you notice that these guys, like, they don't animate, they just snap into place. That's bad. There is something else we can do. I don't even know if this works. I'm just seeing what happens. There is a very special property within animated called layout, which automatically knows how to detect changes in style, in position, and so on. And then it'll like mathematically calculate the difference so that it can do things like that. I don't know if you can see it, but like what it's doing is I'm shuffling the array. I'm randomizing the items, right? But when it renders, this auto layout knows how to transition from point A to point B, whatever the case may be. And it does this like on the fly, hyper performant the way it does this. And I can go like this forever. It cancels and knows how to reset itself. It's wonderful. And all this stuff hopefully is built into the animation engine, system, or library that your component library uses, which is here, animation system. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time if you were to try to write that manually, which is why I'm using Framer Motion, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that hopefully I don't have to do. Let's see if this works. Yeah! I don't know if you can see it, but they animate. Do you see?
I am always super impressed by how little code you have to write sometimes to do these things. It's amazing.
That's the goal.
Well, I shouldn't say you. You wrote all of this crazy code, but for someone like me, I could just drop in a couple of these things and it just works.
Yeah, but that's how it should be though, right? Like it should feel this easy. And like, and also well.
Like it would have taken me longer to prototype that in Figma than it did for you to drop in a couple tags.
And this stuff has reduced motion stuff built in. Yeah, so cool. We have GitHub style like avatars that kind of animate and do whatever. And also you can adjust how they animate, by the way. I think you can adjust the timings and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just gonna leave it default for now. Yeah, check that out. That's fun. Well, the offset's a little bit much, maybe. I'm just gonna make it more. I don't know.
Now you need to anchor it to a different side.
Bang, bang. I don't know. So, this is like, I swear I didn't do this ahead of time. I'm just nerding out. Just like animate just worked. And I was like, in theory, I knew it worked, but I didn't apply it in this way before. So, are we happy with like what is responsible for what in this case? Oh wait, that was weird. Anyway, yeah, so we can use animated for custom interactions like hover or tap or whatever the case may be. And then this little guy, this GitHub avatar custom component, just tracks the hover state, right? And then it animates this accordingly. ZStack, this one is responsible for layering the Z indexes, and you can reverse it or you don't have to. Like in this case, I am not reversing it. I still get that. This is more of a GitHub style. And for every single one of these items, it is responsible for animating itself when it transitions to the new position, based purely on this offset that I've added. And I feel like those are some good separations for like what is responsible for what. And like you said, Sean, I am so excited that I was able to build this by writing like what? I don't know, 20 lines. It's pretty cool. Do I still need this? Maybe I do. Does this break without it? No, it's fine. Okay, so let me just jump into ZStack. I think I need to do some cleanup. So yeah, so that's not great. Maybe this is fine. I think this is fine. This one needs this for sure. Position relative. Flex. Should it be display flex? I think display flex is right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. So there is a very interesting thing that I kind of have to do that I wish, like I want to improve this part when it comes to how the styles are compiled, but right now I don't know of an easy answer for this. So right here, you see that there's on the fly custom CSS compiling when this thing renders. That's fine. Like you've throughout this session, you've seen me use this CSS property every now and then, which is cool. However, if I do it in this way, the ZStack view like this, when I go to use my ZStack component, like here, if I were to write custom CSS in this way, this does not get applied because this one is overriding that. So that's bad. So to combat this, so like to ensure proper order of operations kind of thing, there is a little bit of a secret property within view, within the base view, called CX. So what CX does is, in terms of order of operations for CSS compiling, lol, and just oh man, I love this map. So where we're at right now is we are at the a cross section of compiler, emotion, and style system. We are right here. Okay, the order of operations is this: CX, CSS. Wait, class names. So that is the order of operation. Ultimately, when it all goes down to the kind of like consolidation compile stage. So what I need to do is const cx, this accepts an array or anything, it's kind of handy, is I need to grab something. Const css from, I need to grab this handy dandy function from the style system. What this does is I'll just grab this, bloop, put it here, CX here. So nothing changes, right? We still get that effect. But if I wanted to write custom CSS for reasons, because reasons is always a really good reason, then I can, in theory. Yeah, so CSS property still works throughout, which is great. And the dynamic offset, again, this offset was dynamic, right? It started with this 20 or something and 0. It's compiled on the fly using that very special CX property right here. So you see this ZStack thing that's flashing? I can't use my mouse, but you see right after the word WP component ZStack, the CSS hyphen whatever, that thing changes. So these styles are pre-compiled based on reasons, based on all the dynamic things that we've added. In this case, the padding was dynamic because it needed to be changed on the fly, right? So yeah, so it's just swapping between those class names in order to achieve that effect. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. So that is done. That is fine. That is happy. I kind of don't like this part. I will, instead of rendering a random div, always render a view. Never render, in this, as far as this library is concerned, never render stray divs or like spans or anything like that. If you need to render a low-level bare bones thing, use a view. Use text or one of the other primitives, and you can change the markup of what this thing is by using the as property. So I'm using a view, but I can render this as a H1 if I wanted, or an image or anything else. And again, the reason for that is because views, they are very smart. They have a lot of built-in things like box reset and all that stuff built in. Cool, it's rendering views. Position, relative, margin left. Z index, I think is fine. Position, relative, that part I think needs to be adjusted. Oh no, on the fly. So what I'm thinking right now is like similar to what I did here. CX, and this was kind of dynamic. I can kind of do the same thing here. So what I'm going to do is, gosh, I really need to change this very silly class name. Export const position relative. It's fine. This is fine. CSS position relative. Position absolute. Absolute. Okay. Okay. So now I have two styles that I've created, and all of them are available here in the styles object. So what I can do is I can do something like this. Is stacked on top of each other? If yes, use styles position absolute. Otherwise, use styles position relative, I guess. So now I can get rid of that. That should work in theory. Yeah, that still works. So now that is no longer an inline style, which is what we want. Like it should be, yeah, they're dynamically calculated here. So that's cool. So this one is a very minor detail. I can leave this as is, but there's something that I have to consider when it comes to both dev experience debugging and testing. Because if I were to take a look at the markup for these guys, right? They're arbitrary divs with arbitrary class names. They are not reliably targetable. What I mean by that is, like, if you're to use a testing framework, whether it's, I don't know, insert testing framework of choice, Enzyme, React testing framework, whatever the case may be, or Cypress or anything else, you have to target elements based on specific selectors, right? Like a class name or data attribute or whatever the case may be. But with this one, if I were to write a test for this, which I ultimately you would, right? You would test to see if you have proper Z indexing. It's impossible. Not impossible. It's not. You can't reliably target these random class names. So you need to have some sort of constant way for these guys to be identified. And what I have within the library is a very special property called, not property, it's a very special function called NS, which stands for namespace. And what NS does is you're able to give certain things names. So Z index item, and it taps into the system, and in doing so, it will give them dedicated names. Like here, you see Z index stack, right? So that means when I'm let's say I'm debugging the code or inspecting elements to find things, you can do like a command F and do a Z in ZStack, whatever, and you're able to find them very, very easily. Like you can read, you can understand what this thing is, right? That's important. And also it provides a attribute for you to target when you're testing. And this NS namespacing thing is built throughout the entire context system. Again, that's that social network I described earlier of like how all the components are kind of connected to each other. When you connect it using connect, it automatically injects a namespace for you. Not only that, this is probably a little bit unnecessary as far as this library is concerned, but it also injects this WP components class name for you in case, I guess, folks still want to target it based on that reason. I don't know. But those ones are automatically injected for us. That way we don't have to really think about naming things too much. And the display names, which is like a React thing, you can see here, Z-index, animated, GitHub avatars, that's like a custom thing we made. Elevation, like all those guys are injected for you when you use connect. When you connect to the context social network of this library. So yeah, lots of things going on underneath the hood that makes this whole thing feel a little bit more seamless as you graduate from the super low level to the happy place where you don't need to worry about all that stuff. Anywho, I feel like this is probably in a good spot. Margin lefts are, I feel like it's okay if it's, No, I'm not too happy with this. I want the margin left to be CSS properties, not inline style. So I'm going to change that as well. CSS, and all I got to do is plop, plop. There we go. What's cool about this CSS thing is like how you write inline styles is how you can compile CSS rules, or you can write them like a string, as you maybe are used to. Like that's probably my preferred way, like using these backticks and just writing normal CSS within. You can do that as well. But here I'm just using an object because it's just a little bit simpler in this kind of context. And yeah, so now the offsets should be compiled into the CSS rule. We don't see them as inline styles anymore. Just to double check, we have an offset of 40. Let me just change that to an arbitrary number like 27. And that should still work. Cool, 27. Compiled down, great. Compiled to the padding left, great. Cool. All this works. I'm going to get rid of this purple background. Don't need that anymore. Yeah. So I think with that, ZStack, HStack, VStack. Where's the original GitHub thing? Where is it? Where is it? Where's the GitHub issue? Yeah. HStack, VStack, ZStack. Those layout components or primitives are now part of the library, which allow us to very quickly, build experiences like this avatar thing that can animate. It's really cool. Or less exciting things, but still practical. UI like this, like what we get from GitHub, but writing very, very little code. Well, an okay amount of code, I would say. Yeah. CSS is controlled. Everything is aware of each other because they're tapped into the context social network that lives within the system. And I'm quite happy about this. I don't know about you, but I quite like this. Yeah, and I think that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in for like 2+ hours. My goodness, you guys are champions. Any thoughts or feedback or comments?
Thank you for sharing, John.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
It was really great to hear all that.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I plan on doing these more often, and hopefully people tune in. If not, I'll just be talking to myself, which I've done before, and it's fine. But yeah, Elizabeth, Sean, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be saving this video. Hopefully that works, because last time I tried to save a Zoom video, it didn't work. And I'll upload it to my YouTube. Yeah, hopefully I don't know what it is I'm going to be building next, but we'll see. And hopefully it'll be just as fun as this one. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Catch you later. Bye. How do I do this? Stop recording. You can leave. I'm just trying to figure out how Zoom works. Stop recording.
When you end the call, it should save it.
I'm scared of ending. That's how it broke in the first place. Stop.
Did you choose to do it locally or?